and welcome back to Love Your Food. This week we have another fermented item for you. This is our recipe for kimchi. Now this is a recipe that Chef Caleb has adapted from a few different recipes that we found. This one is not exactly vegetarian. It does still use oyster sauce, but it does omit whole oysters and dried shrimp. So let's get going with the ingredients. So we're going to be using bok choy. Some nice fresh bok choy here. There's going to be a little bit of water, some salt, and some sugar. We're going to be using some of our dried hot peppers, some ginger. We're going to be inoculating this with some of our fermented pepper relish, which we have the recipe for on our channel. Some onion, some green onion. This is actually Chinese leek. Some fish sauce. A little bit of rice wine vinegar. This is dark soy sauce. And some oyster sauce. So if you omit, there's a couple of things in there that are not vegetarian. The fish sauce is not vegetarian, and I believe the oyster sauce is not either. Omitting those would make this vegetarian. So we're just going to start by, we're just going to examine the bok choy. If it's pretty clean, then it doesn't require a whole lot of washing. What we're going to do is just the dried sort of bottom root part. We don't necessarily want that, so we're just going to cut those off. Just going to make sure that those are removed. They aren't tasty. We don't really need them in the jar with everything else. So we're just going to very carefully remove those. And then we're going to make a little bath for our bok choy. So here is part of our salt. And we're just going to add some cold or room temperature water. We don't want this to be warm or hot water. We don't want to cook the bok choy at this point. We just want to soak it. And this does a couple of things. It makes it a little more flexible to fit into the jar. It also does get any last little bits of grit out and that sort of thing. It also lets some of that salt soak into the leaves, which just helps keep everything a little more flavorful, and also add some salt to the mixture, which we need. So we're just going to pack that in to the salted water. If you find that they're floating a little bit, you can just give them a good press down. If you find that they're floating a little bit, you can just pop a plate on top, and that will hold them down. You do want them all submerged as much as possible. And there you go. We're just going to hold that down with a plate. Then meanwhile, while that is just soaking, we are going to make our paste that we're going to add to this. So we're going to start with the oyster sauce. And we're adding this to, we have this jar from our mixer. We use a Bamex. It comes with this little container that you can mix in. So we're going to add the oyster sauce, the fish sauce, and of course, as usual, all of the amounts and ingredients are going to be in the description below. A little bit of the rice wine vinegar. Followed by a little bit of that dark soy sauce. We like to use the dark soy sauce. It really does add a really nice flavor to everything. It does make it quite dark, obviously. We're just going to rinse everything off with a little bit of the water to make sure that we're getting all of that ingredient in there. And then we're going to add the remainder of the salt and sugar. And then we're going to start adding the solid ingredients. So we've got our onion here. We've already added half. Again, we're going to be mixing this together. We're going to be using our stick blender for this. So it doesn't need to be in particularly small pieces because we're going to be burr mixing this. It's going to be all a paste when we're all done. You can also do this in a blender or a food processor. Blender works a little bit better. You want this to be a pretty fine paste. And again, you don't need to make these particularly small or pretty slices. It's all going to get blended. So we're going to take our hot peppers here, Now we are sort of doubling down on the hot peppers because we have these nice dried, these are like Thai bird chilies. We also have that ghost and scorpion chili fermented hot sauce that we're adding as well for the fermentation to be inoculated. We're adding that to just sort of kickstart everything. So we're a little bit doubling down with the heat on this. It did turn out very hot, but it turned out delicious. It was a really, really excellent kimchi. So we're just going to get that into our pot. You want to be careful. You want to try and lose as little as possible. We are still trying to navigate our way around our new kitchen, which is a little bit smaller than our previous kitchen. But we're getting used to it slowly. So next we're going to start with our ginger, and as usual, Chef Caleb here is just going to be scraping the ginger off with the back of his knife here. This is just a really easy way to peel it. The skin comes off quite easily. Now the ginger, even though we are going to be burr mixing this with our stick blender, the ginger is quite fibrous. We do want to get this a little bit smaller because it's so fibrous. It takes a little bit longer to burr mix. It's a little harder to do. So it does help to get the ginger a little bit smaller than anything else in there. Garlic, onion, not a problem at all to burr mix. That all goes pretty easily. The ginger a little tougher, so you do want to get it a little bit smaller before you start mixing it or blending it. So there we go, that's pretty good for the ginger. Now a lot of these ingredients are going to be sort of to taste. You don't need to add salt to this, of course. We've already added salt and sugar, and the soy sauce is also quite salty. As with any other fermented product, you do want to maintain a certain level of salt, and that's part of why we soaked it. So now we're going to add that fermented ghost and scorpion chili relish in there. That is going to kickstart the fermentation. That is got all of our lovely lactobacilli in there. That is a beautiful fermented product. We will have a card somewhere here with the link to that video. And then we're just going to burr mix this. This is our little Bamix blender. We use this a lot. And you want to use a lower speed for this, and you do want to make sure that the guard is completely submerged if you're doing this. Otherwise, you're looking for very spicy, salty splatter around your kitchen. And as I said, you can use a blender for this as well. That's just fine. We have this stick blender, which works extremely well for us. That's about as far as you want to take it. It doesn't have to be absolutely liquefied. It doesn't have to be completely smooth. It's okay to have a little bit of texture left. You just want to get everything pretty uniform in there. So now we're going to take our bok choy out. This has been soaking for a little while we made that paste. And we just want to give everything a good shake. There is a little bit of grit left at the bottom of the bowl. So it's a good thing we soaked this. Just gets those last little bits out. So we're just going to make sure that they're pretty dry. We're just going to make sure they're good and clean. They don't need to be perfectly dry. Some of the salt has soaked in. They have this nice green color. They look a little bit like they've been blanched, but we didn't boil them. We didn't want to cook them at all. So now we're going to start preparing them for the jar. We're going to stick them back. We've emptied out our bowl, obviously. We've gotten rid of any grit or anything that was left in the bottom of the bowl. And we're just going to stuff these bok choy back into the bowl. And you want them, they can be pretty tightly packed in there. And then we're going to just add our paste on top here. So you might want to use gloves for this. We used, you see Chef Caleb here has added some latex gloves because this is quite spicy, especially the way we've made it. Between the dried peppers and the fermented pepper relish, this was quite a spicy paste that we added to our sauce here, to our bok choy. So it does, when we're doing a little bit of work on it here, it does help to have the gloves on. You don't want to touch your eye, touch your face, or anything like that after touching this extremely hot paste. There are other traditional things that get added to this as well. XO sauce, sambal, all of those can be used. The hot pepper paste as well from Korea. Now we have this beautiful jar. We're going to start just stuffing the bok choy in. Helps to use a wide mouth jar, one that you can fit your hand in, just so you can have a little easier time placing them. And see Chef Caleb just gently placing everything in there. He actually is going to try and pack everything in as tight as he can in there. It's a little tricky using just his fingertips, but he'll do his best. So you can see there, everything is packed in there. It looks like there's not a lot of liquid. That's fine. This is, number one, there's still a fair amount of the paste remaining in the bowl, which is a lot of liquid. And because of all of the salt, a lot of liquid is going to come out of that bok choy and keep everything just submerged. So that's fine. You don't worry about that right now. A lot of liquid is going to come out of that of the veggies. And you see here, we're just going to pour everything out. We're just going to make sure that all of that beautiful sauce, that beautiful paste gets added on top. And then Chef Caleb's just going to push everything down as far as he possibly can. He doesn't want a whole lot of air bubbles or anything like that. He's just going to squish everything down so that it's all pretty tightly compressed. This will help once the liquid starts to come out to keep everything submerged. So that's our jar. If for some reason you have forgotten your scallions, or in our case Chinese leek, then now's a great time to prepare that. So Chef Caleb's just going to give this a light chop. This is all going to be, again, fermented in with everything, which does have a sort of tenderizing effect. It's a fairly tough vegetable, but once it's fermented, it really does become quite tender. So he's just going to give that sort of a rough chop. It's okay if it has a little bit of texture. Some slightly larger pieces is fine. And unfortunately, we do have to. Chef Caleb's going to try and squeeze some in there, but if you really want it to have good contact with everything that's going to be fermenting in there, you are going to have to take some out. So we've taken a layer of our bok choy out, and we're going to add some of these beautiful leeks, these Chinese leeks, in as well. This has a really nice flavor, really nice texture, so I do recommend it. If you have scallions work very well for this as well. Nothing has started fermenting or anything yet, so you're really not disturbing much. But again, you do want to make sure that you get the last of that nice paste into your jar. And there you go. So that's it. After we left this out at about room temperature for about a week, and then we put it in the fridge. We covered it, as you could see a little earlier. We covered it, but we did not seal it because it's live fermentation. There will be some gas buildup, so you don't want to seal it. You do want to leave it covered but not sealed, otherwise you risk your jars breaking. So it makes this amazing, incredible, rich and spicy kimchi, and it is absolutely delicious. Goes with a lot of things. So we had a great time with this one. We hope you like this recipe. If you like this recipe, please do like and subscribe. And if you have any recipes you'd like to see Chef Caleb try on the channel, please let us know in your comments below. And remember to love your food.